Catapulting Commissions family, what's up, team? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Catapulting Commissions podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Garcia. Look, Catapulting Commissions family, we often talk about the world of sales leadership, executive leadership, and the challenges that come with it. Because the truth is, in Catapulting Commissions, we talk about a lifestyle where you can develop a consistent commissionable income. That is great for the individual contributor. But to you, my loyal listeners, many of you have reached out to me that, hey, I'm not just an individual contributor. I contribute at a much greater level. I have people that I'm pushing. My commission comes from the team, no longer my individual thoughts, which leads me to our guest today. Our guest today, Michelle Cox, comes from us in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's an executive life and leadership coach. She helps executives level up their business, leading with more impact, increasing engagement, productivity, and surpassing their key performance indicators. She's a business strategist working with major companies, major C-suite executives focused on their leadership development. And in a time that leaders are being challenged, I would say arguably one of the greatest times of my lifetime, there's a good person in your corner, and that person today is Michelle Cox. So be sure to listen to the full show. We'll drop all her contact info at the end. Michelle, welcome to the Catapulting Commissions podcast. I'm glad to have you. So let's jump into this, Michelle. I thought originally in the beginning of March 2020, I recorded a podcast and said, COVID, it's going to be a challenging time. We're going to get through this. It is not going to be here later. We are going to 2022. And I have made a joke, but it's no longer a joke. It's the truth. In 10 or 15 years right now, executive and MBA and leadership programs are going to be writing books about how people handled this COVID pandemic, from profitability, retention, growth, all the above. Right now, with the executives you see, what is causing them to lose sleep at night right now?
I would say that they're not confident in their team and the productivity that they're getting out of their team working remotely. Like they keep thinking that they're going to come back, that their team is going to come back in the office. And while they've been successful, they're meeting their goals and they're seeing that. But from a relationship standpoint and teamwork standpoint and all of that, they're really struggling to drive that piece of it and that piece of the productivity.
Mm. I hear you on that, and I mean, we're at the point now. We've been doing this some going on almost 24 months. So if they're losing sleep in this space, what are some of the things you can do to engage with that productivity? And I completely agree with you. I've gone from a point where if I want to work with somebody, I would interview them. Meet them at a Starbucks, meet them in a conference room. And now I'm conducting a lot of interviews on Teams and Zoom, and I'm putting more weight. I personally hate it, and because I love the connection. There's so much to be said. It's not always feasible right now. So what can we do currently to truly increase that productivity? And I would even argue productivity comes from an employee engagement, right? I mean, there's employers are having a hard time just retaining their people right now. So what is it that we can do in that space?
Yeah, I would agree with you. So you nailed it 100%. So the productivity comes from engagement. And one of the things that I'm seeing most about the employee engagement piece is that they're not building relationships the same way that they were building relationships when they were in person. So they get on a Zoom call and they're diving right into the business piece versus allowing people to get related and how was your weekend? What's new with you? How are the kids? You usually typically walk into a meeting room and you have a social aspect to the actual meeting, and that is being completely removed. So, what I'm working with my clients on is bringing back the social piece and being in relationship with their team and allowing their team to be in relationship with one another.
Mm. It in bringing that social piece. I mean, are these like just is this just like the 5 minutes before the call? Hey guys, how's your family? Or is this like there's like an activity involved? What does that look like?
It's really just being human. Like, how would you
Mm.
be if you were showing up to a meeting? Would you dive right into the meeting, or would you start off being like, hey, how is everybody? How was your weekend? And just allowing it to naturally flow and then dive in. So it's bringing how you would show up in person into the actual meeting room.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that. I'm thinking about some of the calls that I've been a part of that jump right to meetings, right? And nobody feels welcome when the executive or you have a meeting and you're like, "Hey, I have 25 minutes. Let's just jump right in and let's get going." And now, granted, I probably pissed some people off right now because someone's be like, "Anthony, you don't know what my effing schedule looks like." You're probably right. I don't, but I have a busy schedule myself too. I know that if there's a time where I have to cut something short, you hit me in the head here, Michelle. I feel like you're talking about. I get pissed because there's times where I've been like, "Hey guys, we got quick 20 minutes. Let's just jump into it," and I do lose some of that connection. So I love your thoughts on that on adding that in. Um, are you seeing right now with? I mean, is it? And this is a short window period in the grand scheme of businesses for us to make a statement. But are you seeing an impact in overall employee retention based on how we're handling the interaction in these Zoom or Teams meetings? I mean, what is it something quantifiable, or is this something that you just hypothesize? Like, how are we making the distinctions between I want to keep my people and I'm losing my people? And Michelle, if I just talk for 5 minutes before the conference call, am I going to keep my people? I mean, that's at the simplest point, is that the answer, or is there more to it?
Well, I would say that's like one piece of the puzzle. So it's
Okay.
not going to be the silver bullet, and because it's going to be a combination. So it's, am I building an authentic relationship with my team? Am I being vulnerable and sharing what's actually going on with me too, versus just showing up thinking everything's all sunshine and roses? Because, and it's not. Like, the executives are experiencing just the same pain points as their employees are. So being vulnerable is key in this, like being normal, like just being normal, and you're talking to someone that they can relate to. Another piece that I would say from a great resignation standpoint is really continuing development of your team. I've seen that is a huge piece that's going by the wayside. So the development portion of teams, so executives developing their teams and HR taking the lead on developing their teams and all of that piece of it, it's gone to the wayside, or they're continuing to rely on everything web. Well, let's face it, we're sick of being on the web. We're sick of being on conference calls. So we have to introduce things differently so we can engage employees in a different way. When you start having those three pieces, you have relatedness, you're vulnerable, you're communicating, you're you're literally continuing to develop your team, and then on top of it, you're paying them for their worth. So I'm not saying go out and give people raises. I'm saying let's just make sure that you're paying them for what they're actually worth. And as if you have all of those components, the executives that I'm working with that are continuing with all of those components, they're not seeing employees leave. Their employees are like, sign me up. I'm still here. I know the bigger picture. You're taking care of me in a different way, and they want to stay.
Hmm. Look, I love the results you just described, because the results is, yes, I want to work here, I want to stay, but I want to gain clarity on your definition. You said that the employers that are having better success at retaining employees during the Great Resignation, catapulted commissions family. If you haven't heard me talk about it or haven't read about it, the Great Resignation right now, employees are resigning, leaving their companies at an all-time high. Pick any major publication, Forbes, Entrepreneur, CNBC, just Google Great Resignation. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. People are leaving. The reasons they're stating they're leaving, right, is quality of life becomes a little bit more valuable. Some people have learned to make their lifestyle work on one income. Some have said, hey, you know what? I'm going to pursue a passion, or have just fallen in love with being at home and don't want to make that commute. Whatever the reason is, the Great Resignation's here. Michelle, you said that those that are developing their people are having a better level of retention, whether it's HR or the executive leadership. Help me understand, when you say develop your people, what's your definition of developing your people?
So it looks like, like if I'm talking to an employee, where do you want to be a year from today or 3 years from today? And you don't even have to go, this isn't like, where do you want to be 5 years from today kind of question. This is like a realistic, what is the next position that you desire to be in? And let's create the plan. So we're developing you, meaning that I'm coaching you, I'm giving you the tools and resources so you can level up and you're continuing to grow so you can go into that next position a year from today. And whether it be, and they're taking a risk. So I do want to say this, be really clear. It's a risk because when you develop your team, you also you're risking that they could leave. But what I've found is that when they're actually developing, they're like, I want to stay here because they're investing in me as a person.
Okay, so let's keep going down that talk track because I love it. I love the direction you're going in, but I want to, when we say develop people, and this is some of the confusion I lie when I work with executives or I've seen companies say, hey, we develop our people. You said, where do you want to be in 3 years from now, 1 to 2 years? If I tell you, hey, Michelle, thanks for taking the time. Where do I want to be in a year and a half from now? Honestly, Michelle, I would love to uh, be in a position where I have worked some money in savings, and some of the money that I have that I've saved up is working for me, whether it's in a stock market, cryptocurrency, real estate, just some other passive income method. That's where I want to be in 12 months. That's one conversation that happens. And another conversation that can happen is and many times employees will feel when their leader asks them, where do you want to be in a year from now? I want to be the manager. I want to be the next top performer. I want to be on the path for growth and I want to retire. And I believe sometimes we get the corporate answer of where I want to be in a year, and not everyone's going to share the personal answer. So where I get stuck with that thought is, um, as a leader, I feel sometimes you have to be willing to embrace both, like, and almost encouraging both. Um, do you have some? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, I can talk on this forever because I love the subject, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I agree. I agree. I agree. So 100%. It's personal and professional. And it's literally both ends of the spectrum. Where do you want to be year from today personally? Where do you want to be a year from today professionally? Because quite frankly, a lot of things, how we show up in one area is how we show up in other areas of our lives. So if you start coaching to the skills underneath the areas of where you want to be, like what are the skills that it's going to take for you to get there, and start coaching in those, you're going to start impacting someone's lives both personally and professionally. And that's where I'm looking at the development piece of it. It's developing the behaviors, developing the skills where they want to be. Someone wants to be a manager a year from today. What are the skills that it's going to take for them to be a manager? Is it leadership skills? Is it PowerPoint skills? I mean, whatever. I mean, presentation skills. Is it communication skills? And you start getting underneath of what actually it is that's going to get them to that next level. And a lot of times it's the same thing personally.
Mm. It's embracing that conversation, and I love the direction you're going in. I love the work you're doing because I do wish more executives followed that path. The sad reality is sometimes we develop people in two phases, right? It takes a lot to develop somebody personally, because what you said is a true reality. That person may leave you. They may just say, hey, I've outgrown you, or hey, my passive crypto investment that I've learned from you is now surpassing the income, which I say it as a joke. And I recently had a conversation with an executive of a large company who, he's like, I don't understand and believe this whole crypto BS. I'm like, look, man, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't understand it for a long time either. And the moment I decided to learn it, I'm telling you, there was a group of young investors right now that are eating up stock market returns. Whether you believe in it or not, they found a way to make it work. At this point, I'd rather professionally develop somebody and have them, almost that sense of loyalty, right, where it's like, do you quit the job, do you quit the manager? So we have to embrace that. There's a great book, and I haven't had him on the show yet, but I keep trying to work my way to him, Matthew Cowley, a great book called The Dream Manager. And the book is 12 or 13 years old, and it talks about developing people based on their dreams. He uses an analogy, really entry level work of janitorial services, but the whole concept was, if I manage people to buy homes, and their first home, will they stay forever? And it lowered turnover rate. It was an amazing story, really easy read. But I think about that. I wish more people had executed on that. Which, now, you said something earlier too. Is executive leadership, is the HR in the organization at all levels? Who is responsible for developing their people? Is it the executive leader? Is it HR? Is it middle management? Where does that come from? Or who's leading the charge here?
I believe it starts with the executive leader. I believe there's a responsibility for any leader, no matter what level, that if you have a team of people, it is your responsibility to actually develop them. And that starts at the executive, because if you're not doing it at the executive level, the likelihood your next level down isn't doing it and the next level down isn't doing it, because they're looking to you to lead the way. So that if you're truly going into the mindset of your lead how you led, you have to lead the way and model it for your team.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it starts at the top, right? Don't do as I say, do as I do. Let's get involved and let's dive in. And I love my HR people when they're needed, right? When HR issues, legality, keep me out of hot water. I do not love my HR people when it comes to developing my people. And I've had HR people on, and I've had people who I've worked with who are like, I can't believe you're talking crap about. Look, I myself am a sales leader. I'm very skilled in developing that sales person. That is who I work with and who I develop. So I'm gonna take that ownership and develop. I'm not gonna punt it to the HR person. Now, granted, there are some tools and skills you can use that you can learn, but work through me on that. I'm not gonna just punt it to you. And that just irks the crap out of me when I see companies and leaders do that.
I look at HR as a resource and a tool and resource that you can leverage. Like, you may not know, like, how do you have a tool I can use to help my employee develop their communication skills? And HR may be able to provide a different resource for you, but I don't look at them as being responsible for it.
That's a really good way. They 100% agree with that statement. They are a resource. They are not responsible, because if you are the executive, as busy as you are, we stated earlier, I don't have the 5 minutes to say, "Hey, Michelle, how was your family this weekend?" or "What'd you do?" Because I'm so busy that I should definitely be too busy because I don't have the time to Google or look at my intranet or my internal systems or figure out, hey, how do I help somebody with their presentation skills? Or for heaven forbid, somebody wants to learn. They want financial advice in their portfolio. Like I don't want to give you my advice because I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Let me find somebody who can work with you. Like all of that, we punt that off. So I love that.
Yeah, like, utilize your team. Like, who's your team that you can start utilizing? And quite frankly, a lot of times you start asking your employees questions and you can punt it back to them. So if you want to learn, like this, you use crypto as an example. If you want to learn crypto, what resources are currently out there that you can leverage? If we went on to Google today, what resources were there? And you start looking at what those resources are, and then then you start creating the plan. You're going to read this book by this date, and you don't have to necessarily be the person that provides the solution to the how. You provide the tools to get there.
I like that. I like it. You're providing the tools. Uh, I think sometimes you look at the leaders, they feel like they have to have the solutions to everything, and we don't. Like, just point blank, I have had employees who work with me who are really aggressive in real estate, and I tell them, I'm like, man, I own a few properties, and it's just, I'm very traditional, old school. Like, I bought an extra property, moved on to the next one, just kept it. I am not the savvy real estate investor, but and full fat cat. I'm a business flipper and a crypto. I do a lot of other different things that I'm like, oh, I can put some money here. I can spruce this up. Then I can go flip it on the open market. Everyone has their different things. But I've had people who are really aggressive in real estate, and so I look at them like, hey, dude, I'm very basic, but I can introduce you to some people. And just being that connector. So I love that direction. The we don't have to provide all.
Exactly. And the one thing that I want to circle back to as well is when we get fearful of our employees leaving because we're developing them, the one thing you have to remember, and what I've seen literally, is if an employee leaves, they're still an advocate for your company. So they're an advocate for you to get more employees. They're an advocate for you to get clients. So they're out there praising your name and giving you awareness that you wouldn't normally have. So you're still getting the fold back, and you're getting the return on investment. You're just getting it a completely different way.
Yeah, I love that. I think I kudos to that statement, and we definitely, if you didn't hear that the first time, catapult to commissions family, rewind and listen to that. Just because somebody leaves you doesn't mean they're your mortal enemy. And even if they've outgrown you, it's one of the harshest. It's a reality, and you have to face it. I know, and who I'm going to speak about listens to the show consistently, but I know one of my very early professional development employees I hired a young girl right out of college. I think she was 22 years old, and she worked with me for several years. I developed her. I mean, I took her from 60 grand to over 360 grand a year in income. I mean, it was just awesome. And then she came to me one day. She's like, "Hey, by the way, appreciate all the development, et cetera, et cetera." And in her space, a hot new startup that she has vetted is recruiting her. And the amount of money they were offering her was nearly twice the amount of her highest income year. And I'm like, so she just, she has tears in her eyes having this conversation. And I don't know what she thought my response was going to be. I was like, "Look, I would leave me." Like, just point blank, like, you should leave me. Like, if you don't leave me, I'm going to be mad at you, because what you're being offered is just a sign of the times. You grow. I didn't want you to leave. She left. We're lifelong friends. She just came to have dinner with my wife and family a couple weeks ago, went to her wedding. But you embrace that. So everybody's going to grow from you. And I believe you should want people to outgrow you. So, I love that. It's speaking of growth. Something I want to dive into here, Michelle, is at the time of recording, at the time of era, we're embracing 2022. Every company right now is looking at their business saying, "Here's what we're going to execute in 2022." Whether it's fiscal year 2022, which you may be into it already, or if it's calendar year 2022, you're definitely into it. Whatever the scenario is, they're looking at it saying, "Hey, I want to grow. I want to achieve different things." Sales professionals, right? If you're that high level sales performer listening to the show, you should at this point in time know what your 2022 goals are. Here's the ugly reality: more people fail goals than they achieve. Right? If you go into this whole theme of New Year's resolution, 92% of them don't ever see the day of light. They sound good, and then they don't ever come to life. So, what do you believe are the core elements for leaders to be successful in achieving their goals?
So I think it truly, like, it boils down to, I coach on 5 different areas, and it's really intentional that I coach in these areas. And it's all in leadership: becoming the leader of your life, the leader in your work, leader in your relationships, leader in your organization, and leader of your team. And when you have all 5 components put together, you've all of a sudden created this magical powerhouse to achieve your goals. So if we dive into leader of your life impacts your business and vice versa. Like, let's talk about personal. When you have stuff going on personally, it's going to impact you professionally. And that's just so it goes. Whether your well-being, your mental health, your physical health, your like community, your like whatever, it's like super important to you from a well-being perspective, and it looks different for everybody, but that needs to be handled. And I will tell you that 80% of the executives I work with, that is not handled right off the bat.
Okay. So, when you say that's not handled, what does that look like? Someone's going to say, "I have it handled," but let's just give them here's the ugly mirror. What does not being handled look like?
It means you are not in action, let's say 80% of the time, doing that thing that you really want to do. So let's say I want to be 25 pounds lighter, but you're not doing anything to eat better, exercise, do anything towards that goal. Or you're doing it like once a week and you're hoping. You have a hoping phase into this. Or let's say community. Like, community is super important to you. You want to spend time with your community. If you're not spending any time with your community, then you have a well-being that's not taken care of. You're not feeding yourself like you need to feed yourself. You're starving yourself.
Okay, I like it. I like it. I would be an advocate on why this is why you need a Michelle in your corner, because someone has to say, "Hey, you said this, but in reality, you didn't." And I have found, and I'm going to throw some jabs at some of the executives I know who listen in, right? I have found the higher you go up, the less people around you want to say, "Hey, you're fucking up, dude. Hey, that's not the right stuff you're doing. Hey, you said this, I'm calling BS." Because the higher you go up, it's an ugly part of the corporate structure, of the entrepreneur structure, and it cringes me when I see it. you want people around you that challenge you. Like you have to have someone that says, "You're full of shit, Anthony. You said you wanted to lose weight. You're eating Taco Bell every night. You're drinking 4 beers a night. That is not aligned with what you just said." But because you're the CEO of a 8-figure business or whatnot, and you have this power and you make this income and you have this status, people don't want to have that conversation. So I love, I love, I love that. So these 5 areas, right? You said life, work, relationships, organization, and team.
Yes.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about maybe like the relationship component? Like, how does that have to be in line?
Like creating healthy relationships, more than anything, people want to be seen, like seen for not what they're doing, but for who they're being, like who they are out in the world. They want to be heard, they want communication. So, not just, hey, I heard you, but really listening, asking powerful questions back and forth, and acknowledgement. And when we look at acknowledgement, it's really like responsibility for our actions and for other people's actions. So, acknowledgement of, I did this thing that was freaking fantastic, or I did this thing that was not so fantastic, and owning and having ownership. And a lot of times, what I'm finding is that we're not in true relationship with people. We're not seeing them outside of, hey, a high five, let me give you a high five. You hit that sale. And that's what you're acknowledging them for, versus not seeing that they were resilient. They were like a pillar. They were responsible. They like everything that goes into getting that sale. That's how you're seeing somebody.
Okay. I love it. I like that direction you're going in, and having that 5-part framework. I mean, it really just says, "Hey, are all 5 in alignment?" I'm assuming if one's not in alignment, your chance for success is less. Is that?
Yes. That means you're not in relationship. You're out of relationship. So you can literally say if one component is out, you're out of relationship with that person. And truly, like from a true, like authentic, like trusting, vulnerable relationship, you're out. And when you and this piece is so critical because when you're not in relationship, you no longer have trust. So if you're an executive and you no longer have relationship with your team and they're not trusting you, how likely are they going to go out and do as you say, or feel inspired by you, or want to literally do everything impossible for you to win versus just for them to win?
I love it. I think that relationship component that you share with your people, the trust factors, everything. Michelle, where does my personal relationship fall in this? Is this part of relationship? Is this part of life? And I say my relationship with my spouse, right, or my relationship with my kids. Where does that fall in line with my ability to achieve my goal? Is that relationship component? Is that life component? Is that other? Help me out there.
I would say it's an and conversation, not an either or. Because if a relationship is part of your life and you have kids or family is important and you're not spending time with them, or you're not in relationship, so it's a both component. So if you're out of relationship, that means you have a breakdown in your life and your relationship. Means that you have two areas to work on to get yourself back into from an integrity. Let's look at like an integrity standpoint. And once you're back in integrity, hey, great. Then you have two places back in and you're back in your full power to achieve your goals.
Mm. I like how I like where you go with this because I look at it from uh, it's not an either or, it's an and. I know in my business, right? My wife is my business partner. My wife has her own business, and I'm her business partner. She was also my wife. We also run a family home. I have learned that if her and I aren't in sync, and because I didn't do the laundry or I didn't spend enough time, like whatever the situation may be, it definitely impacts mine or her business. And so we have gotten to the point, and I'm not a marriage counselor, and we've gotten to the point where like, okay, when we're going to talk business, we separate, we go from home, we go on a day, we go on a lunch day, we go sit outside, completely away from the home, not in her business, not in mine, because it's neutral ground. but I've learned. I'm glad you said that, because we just had a conversation within my own marriage. Like, okay, what are our goals, personal, business goals for next year? How are we going to execute them? But we just share them, and we can. This is a whole nother episode. I am not the business or sales coach for my wife's business. I can't be coach and husband. It just, I've tried it, and it just doesn't. Doesn't work. So I love that. All right, so I love the 5-part framework in achieving the goals. Let's go on the opposite side. There's going to be people who are listening who are going to say, okay, I have the 5-part framework in, I get it, but I'm still going to fail. Like, all right, I'm going to miss my goal. What is that reason that people are failing? Even these executives are failing to achieve their goals.
They haven't put in structures sufficient to their resistance. I know that's a really long say, but structures sufficient to their resistance. And you can look at resistance of, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough resources, there's not support, there's not money. Like, you're looking at, like, they're not setting themselves up and putting things in place to ensure that they're setting themselves up to be successful. So if they know they have a crazy schedule and they know that they're literally like going in and they're going to be busy all week, and they're not going in necessarily saying, okay, here, guess what? I have no availability proactively, and saying no to the things that is not a priority. So number one. Number two is that they're not necessarily saying, here are my top priorities that I need to take on today. Like, these are the things these are my must haves. And like, instead of looking at all the task level stuff, they get muddled in the task stuff. So they're not intentional with taking on their priorities. Just okay. So it's literally putting structures in place. So it's a structure of putting in your top priorities, and these are your top priorities. This is what you're going to take on. It's ensuring that you have resources available to yourself, so you're not doing it alone.
Catapult the commissions family. Hold up, rewind that. Those are some tweetable moments right there. Let's be honest here. Michelle, I've interviewed, hundreds of guests at this point, thousands of hours, even on air versus off air. Speaking of leadership coaching, structure sufficient to their resistance. Hashtag, we're trademarking that. Michelle Cox. I love that phrase. Like, this once it's dated launch, that is yours. Like, I love that. Like, I can't picture a better way to have that conversation. Do you have the structure in place? Because you're right, we are going to resist. There's going to be something that says, right, it goes to that old cliche of like, oh, I created the goal because I was so motivated at the time, but I didn't think about all this negative, all the things that are going to hit me back, right? It's like Murphy's Law. Hey, I'm going to lose weight. P.S. Why don't you come to this beautiful dessert tasting competition? Ugh, that's not what I was anticipating in life, but it's going to happen. So I like that. I genuinely love that phrase. I really do. And if I ever use it again, I'll always give you credit for it, because I think it's amazing. Because adversity is going to happen. Like, just bottom line, adversity is going to happen. Do you have the support system in place?
And it's really like all these things, when you put all the components, when you have a full plan together, and then you keep measuring back to that plan, you're saying, like, what's getting in my way? And that's why people utilize me, is because I am the reflection to them in saying what's getting in your way. So you don't stop, that you continue to move forward.
I love it. You provide a level of objectivity that we can't provide ourselves. And that is a absolute necessity. If you do not think the most successful minds in the earth have somebody that's providing a level of objectivity, I'm going to challenge you, Catapult to Commissions family, think again. You have to have somebody that's going to point the ugly mirror back at you, that's going to have you think of things differently. Michelle, you work as an executive coach, I work as a sales coach. I love when I get a sales performer or someone that says, do this, or whatever it is. And I love it. I'm like, hey, I'll be honest, man, you're bullshitting me. And they just look at me like, I just paid you for an hour. Yeah, 100%, dude. Like, I don't work for you. Like, there's no performance review. Like, you're paying me for my time. So, we've agreed on a level of honesty here. And I think you're full of shit right now. So let's peel some layers back. Let's talk about this. And I'm a big fan of having that person in your corner. Speaking of that, Michelle, let's, I don't want to run out of time here without giving people an opportunity to learn more about you. So how does somebody learn more about you? What type of work are you doing? Who is the ideal people you work with? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, which is michellelcox.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Those are the two best places to find me. So my last name is spelled COX. And let's see, what else? My ideal client, literally any executive CEO is who my ideal client is. It's who I've worked with for the last 7.5 years, almost 8 years now. And I'm passionate about it. And I'm passionate about it because I believe executives have the ability to create a butterfly effect throughout an entire organization. And it starts with them.
I agree with you, Michelle. I definitely think the executives create, they're the first domino to fall. It creates this massive change in an organization. I just recently had a conversation with a client of mine all on the theory of change management, and 100% starts at the top. So Catapult to Commissions family, do me a favor, go get connected, michelleLcox.com. Check her on LinkedIn at Michelle L. Cox. You'll find both of those links in the show notes below. Michelle, we wish you nothing but an abundant success, and thank you for joining the Catapult to Commissions show. I look forward to hearing numerous success stories, and on air, will you come back in about 12 to 18 months so we can see what has changed?
Absolutely. I would love it.
Great, Michelle. We would love to have you back on the show. Catapult to Commissions family, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you next week.